Hello and welcome to GuyLogic. My name is Temco and this is Rising Islands, a puzzle platform game by Lone Hero Studios. It's about you as a female lead character running through these various levels and shifting between two dimensions to solve a variety of puzzle platformy-esque aspects, and it has a time trial on top. So, before we dive into the actual gameplay, and there are some issues I do definitely have with the gameplay, I would like to take a look in the options menu. So we're gonna do that. As always, you can skip straight on ahead if this is not your sort of thing. There's an annotation on screen for exactly that. For the rest of us, let's head into the settings menu. Now in game settings, you have the inverted Y camera and X camera, which I do appreciate, and also the camera X and Y sensitivity. I would have liked also have mouse sensitivity changes, but that is not in, and I'll explain why I think they forgot that, not so much because they didn't want to add it, but because they were never thinking about a keyboard in the first place. You have a variety of languages here. There is no spoken dialogue at all, so everything is written, but these languages are available if you should so desire. Other than that, we have video settings. It is not a very big menu at all, and for the 3D game, this is quite disappointing. Anti-aliasing of a non-descriptive kind, as well as quality presets. Now this is built in Unity, so these presets will come as no surprise to anyone familiar with Unity engine games. Sadly, it doesn't have anything else. No shadow quality, no post-processing, no anisotrophics, no nothing. And that is a damn shame. Now I'm going to assume most of these are baked into this quality preset, but there's also no advanced options menu, and that is a damn shame. Another thing that this game heavily relies on the two colors blue and red, and guess what kind of color blindness is most prophylactic? Exactly, and it doesn't have anything for that either. The game has full screen on or off and VSync, and while full screen on or off works fine, VSync is perpetually ignored. It does turn off, so the game isn't locked to it, but the button always lights up when you look into the menu, which is a weird little bug. Moving on from video settings into audio settings, you have music and SFX volume. Again, there is no spoken dialogue, so this is fine. There's no master volume, which is a bit of a shame, and when you alt tab out of the game, it doesn't cue out the audio, so you keep hearing in the background, which is a tad annoying if you're like me and recording and checking out things on the game while you're working. A bit of a shame. Not the biggest thing, but a bit of a shame nonetheless. And then we come to controls, and you can see there is a Xbox controller here. It works fine with the Steam controller. I am playing it with a Steam controller for this review. All the gameplay you'll be seeing is me using it with a Steam controller. And the reason I switched away from my keyboard, which does have control bindings, as you can see, even though they're not rebindable, which is a bit of a shame, is that the game doesn't constrain mouse to window. And if I have two monitors, which I do, then the first time I move to the right, my mouse swips off away from the camera and off away from the screen, and I end up clicking on my second monitor, which alt tabs me out, which basically means I die, and it's really annoying. So because the mouse doesn't constrain the window and there's no way to enable that or force that, I was forced to switch to the Steam controller, which in its own defense does work fine, but it's a shame that such an oversight on the mouse binding to window or constraining to window has a negative impact on this game being basically not playable with mouse and keyboard. I really do hope they fix that as soon as possible. As for the rest, as I said, no rebindable keys, which is definitely a shame. I would have liked to see those. Now, which brings us to the end of the options menu. The game performs just fine, and it should, because it's not a very visually taxing game at all. But as I said, even then, the options presets and the graphical fidelity of the game isn't that phenomenal. There's a lot of clipping, there's a lot of elements overlapping each other, and there's a lot of weird camera glitches that you can definitely notice in the game, on top of some of the other bugs. So without any further ado, let's dive into the game and talk about all of those and talk about the good stuff as well. When you load into the game, you'll be in this little hub area, and there's 3 main levels, with each divided into 5, 5, and 3 levels. Now all the levels have the same base goal. Reach the end, pick up a crystal, and each level introduces a few new mechanics. Initially, there is the dash mechanic and the switching between dimensions the mechanic, then there's the wall riding and stuff like that. And all of these mechanics are explained quite well, which is also the most interesting part of the game, and it's also its core element. Running from these ledges to ledges, running from board to board, and jumping from side to side, switching between these two dimensions for red and blue is quite enjoyable. And getting these timings right and going into the time trials and getting everything as tight as you can while picking up some of these crystals, while getting score attacks, all of that is pretty enjoyable, especially once you nail a puzzle or figure out a better way to do a level. Those things are quite enjoyable, and there's leaderboards for all that sort of stuff, which is good in and of itself. Where my issues with the game lie though comes twofold. One, graphically it doesn't look quite nice, and I don't mean to say it looks low fidelity. The art assets and the art style is actually pretty nice. Everything has a distinctly unique feel, and the entire world is very coherent in what it tries to accomplish. The problem I have is that there's basically way too many bugs in regards to movement. On one level, I was stuck in the flying mode as I was jumping, even though I was running. On another moment, after falling to my death for the so many time, I was stuck in the dead pose, lying on the ground, which dying again didn't reset. I had to restart the level to reset that. Then we have the issue with clipping in certain objects, clipping during jumps, and clipping on ledges of various rockies, outcroppings, and even gaps and glitches. It is really annoying that you can't estimate where you'll land in any form or way, because most of the objects in the game, all of the terrain, just isn't very accurate in my feel. And if you have a game where accuracy and quick response is the norm and necessity to complete the level, you damn well better need to make sure that when you have these aspects in the game, that they are as tight and controlled as possible. Now, every level runs you between 30 seconds and about 2 minutes, if you don't die, that is. If you die, there's plenty of checkpoints in the game. The game doesn't try to be difficult or hard for that sake. Some of the puzzles are quite challenging, but overall the game does slowly, incrementally increase the difficulty rating, which is definitely to its benefit. The problem I have with that regard though is that the levels are very slow in increasing the difficulty, and every time a new mechanic is introduced, the entire level is taken up by introducing you to that mechanic in a variety of ways. Now this wouldn't be a problem if the game had dozens and dozens of levels. It doesn't. It has 13, and in about 3 hours I finished all of them. And while I could probably improve myself and get better scores or get higher speeds or get a better road or route into a level, sure, I just personally don't find that really enjoyable. And if I want to do speedruns, there's quite a few better games than this one out there that have a much better community, way better guides if that's the sort of thing I want to get into, and much more established speedrunning communities. And this game doesn't have any of those, which is, while a shame, a fact. When we get all of that combined though, we come to the controls, which is my final and last damning point. Even though I can get around some clipping, even though I can get around some inconsistency in level design, even though I can get around the short length of the game, something I can't get around when you have a game designed around tight controls, and those controls are then not at all, they're not controllable, they flip off in directions, the camera does its own thing half the time, then the game goes from an enjoyable experience, even though short, into a very tedious slog, which is a damn shame, and really did a number on me in regards to me possibly enjoying the game. I went from enjoying the first 5 or 6 levels relatively quickly into getting stuck on a particular part and knowing how to solve that part, but even when I pulled the controls off perfectly, the game would sometimes decide to rotate my camera, or would sometimes decide that the object I was landing on just wasn't that big or that small. Sometimes it would not jump when I gave the command, even though I was clearly, visually, within the parameters to use my jump ability. And more stuff like that really drags the game down a fair bit. And sadly, it never really recovers from that, because when you have a large game with a large number of levels, a few bad levels or a few bad level designs can slip through and be still okay. But in the case of this game that has 13 levels, which you'll be repeating for the time trials and repeating for score attacks, and you have to unlock each and every one by one, progressively, then that becomes quite a bit more annoying. Now, outside of this annoyance in regards to controls and regards to clipping and game physics, the game does offer some very interesting ideas, and these ideas it executes within some adequacy. While the dimension switching isn't something new, we've been seeing it for years in many games, going from Twisted Sisters to many others. It does provide a few key elements which I do find enjoyable. Personally, when I'm playing a game that is about speedrunning, I want to know that there's alternate routes. I want to know that there's different methods of finishing a level. And to the game's credit, every level has a variety of ways you can complete it. There is a simpler way, a much easier way of doing it, the one I normally did, where you can run a level, complete it, and go on to the next one for story, or maybe you're just practicing a certain segment of a level. But it also has different methods where you can change up the things and do a much harder puzzle or a much more controlled area where you can spend much less time in the level, shaving off possibly up to a fifth of the total level time. But again, you do need to make more controlled movement. And personally, I was getting way too frustrated with the variety of issues I had with the control scheme, camera movement, and character movement to bother trying to complete those harder puzzles, because frankly they just weren't worth the time and frustration. So Rising Islands does a few things, and it does some of them with some competence, but generally speaking it is quite a bit of incompetence from a technical perspective. Camera controls and camera movement are wonky, physics detections and collision detections are wonky, and the amount of bugs in terms of assets, clipping, and even animations is quite staggering. Coupled with the game's extremely short length, it is no way that I could recommend this title as it appears right now, unless you are a very desperate soul indeed looking for your next fix in regards to speedrunning. And even then, I'm not sure this will be the game for you. From an artistic side, it has quite a few things going for it, and I would have liked to get the art book for this title as well, but that in itself will not carry it forward. So thank you for watching. If you liked this video, press that like button below. If you didn't like this video, press that dislike button and leave a comment. Tell us what we can do better. Tell us what you liked. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here, GuyLogic.